Hello, 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 and welcome to another round of Collection Connection. We're back to it after a 1 week diversion where my brother was visiting me. And if you haven't seen the video where we talked about the experience of shopping some Philadelphia area record stores, as well as chatting about some of the music that we bought, check it out. I do have plans to start making some other non-collection connection videos in the near future. That's exciting. Back on task for now. Today I will be forging a devilish connection between ZZ Top's fifth album, Tejas, released in 1976, and the breakthrough album from Scottish alt-power jangle popsters Teenage Fan Club with 1991's Bandwagonesque. Now, this is largely just an excuse to talk to you about records. But the game aspect of the show is that I found some facet or quirk that these two seemingly unrelated albums have in common, and we challenge you to figure out what that connection is, leaving your guess down in the comments. The other person included in this we is my brother, Plastic Eric, who runs the Plastic Soundwave Cult channel, who I play the game with. See, every time I pull out an album from my collection to talk about, it relates to an album from his record collection, and vice versa. His videos come out every Monday, mine every Thursday, which gives you a few days to mull over that connection and make your guess. The first right answer gets a shout out in the next video. And so, as promised, I need to take care of business and give credit to Murdoch from Murdoch's Music Minute, who correctly guessed the connection between the previous pair of albums, those being ZZ Top's Tejas and Gary Clark Jr.'s Black and Blue. It's pretty impressive that Eric was able to come up with a connection between just what he had purchased while he was away from his own collection on the road, but that meant it wasn't super tough, and the connection was that both acts hail from Texas. So Murdoch got that, and you can check out his latest video, which at time of recording he just uploaded a review of the Steppenwolf debut album. And the last one that I saw was a review of Raining Sounds, Too Much Guitar album. And you can check those out over on Murdoch's Music Minute, where, just like us, he just likes to talk about records. And so now that care of business has been took, let's get on with the show. Alright, so I'm coming from a position of not knowing a whole lot about either album that I'm talking about this week. Eric showed Tejas from ZZ Top. I, like a lot of people, had Eliminator, and that was when they first showed up really on my radar. They were not that big a thing, although weirdly, I think the Eliminator album itself went to number 3 in the UK. Prior to that, ZZ Top was not really a thing in England during the time period that we were there, and prior to our being there in, say, 1978 or so. I was too young. I wouldn't have caught any ZZ Top anyway, so I wasn't really aware of them till Eliminator. Tejas is their fifth album, put out in 1976, and is not as slick as Eliminator, but still feels very ZZ Top to me. And for not knowing a ton about the band and only really following for that one album, by the time of their follow-up Afterburner, I was already kind of moving on to different pastures. And so I had Eliminator on vinyl way back in the day, but I got rid of it when I got rid of all my albums, and I never bought a copy of it on CD. It seemed fine to me, nothing that I would call objectionable, so it wasn't hard to listen to, but wasn't anything that super stood out to me either. It amazes me how ZZ Top sounds so Texas, how their music doesn't necessarily have a Spanish influence, but lyrically and with things like the album title, Tejas, they sort of have a language inspiration that includes a lot of Spanish. I played it through twice, and nothing about it super stuck in my head, but it seemed pleasant enough. Pretty laid back. There was a track maybe 2/3 of the way in that sounded less laid back, but overall, very ZZ Top. It was fine. I understand that it's not everybody's favorite, and I had to look to make sure that I was listening to the version that Eric had, which is the original version from 1976 and not the remixed version after Eliminator hit so big. They reissued all or a lot of the early albums in something called the Six Pack, where they sort of remixed it to sound a little more like Eliminator with kind of bigger drums and fatter guitars. But I'm pretty sure that it was the original version that I listened to, and it sounded fine. And yet, I had to come up with a connection, and what I came up with was Bandwagonesque from Teenage Fan Club. Yet another Scottish band. I do love my Scottish bands, although I can't say that I love Teenage Fan Club. I'm not a lifelong fan. They showed up on my radar in the year of our Lord, 1991. Spin magazine called this their album of the year. I think I was still reading Spin at that time. I know that they are contrarians. They got on my nerves, Spin magazine, even back then, for seeming to mostly want to be out of step with everybody else. But nonetheless, in the year of Nevermind from Nirvana, they went with Teenage Fan Club as their album of the year. So that was definitely something significant and interesting. But it was not enough to really make me follow them. The album art, this kind of blatant clip art, kind of non sequitur, bandwagonesque, as a title makes me think of bandwagons, obviously. So it's like, hey, this is the time to follow what we're doing sort of thing, or maybe we're following fashions, or not sure exactly what that means, but the big bag of money, kind of cartoonish, bad bag of money was an interesting choice and didn't make a lot of sense to me and didn't grab me and appeal to me. And I knew the single, The Concept, although I probably couldn't have named it as called The Concept, but the one that went, oh yeah, that one, which fell out of my mind, I think, for a long time. I watched a movie called Young Adult, a Charlize Theron movie that used the song heavily. It was something that made her as a character think of somebody who she previously knew, and so she would play the song over and over in the car as she went to try and find this person. Kind of brought it back around. But prior to this, the only Teenage Fan Club I had was a compilation. Eventually I got around to buying something that, in a moment of maybe I should like these guys more or give them a chance. It's a very long title, something like 4,000 something seconds. A very long number that I'm not going to remember right here in the moment. And the primary song that I took away from that liking was What You Do to Me, which I didn't realize at the time necessarily what is a track on this album and was released as a single, but I don't remember hearing it around in 1991. It is a super big star sounding song, and apparently the band in general was sort of accused, for lack of a better word, of being basically big star ripoffs. And some quarters they referred to this album as Big Star's fourth, but I don't hear it necessarily all through the album. But What You Do to Me is definitely Big Star. It's got some Big Star leanings, but it's a good song. I enjoy it. And so it took me a while to buy this album. According to my upload notes, it wasn't until 2019, in the spring of 2019, so about 5 years ago, that I actually bought the album. And I haven't been playing it in heavy rotation or anything like that since I did buy it. And so it took a couple of mad spins here just in the last couple of days. And kind of like the ZZ Top, it's fine, it's good, it has its moments. I think there's a couple of instrumentals, at least in my head they're instrumentals. Satan and Is This Music, which closes the album. Is This Music did catch my ear. I did like that one as an instrumental track. And apparently the song Star Sign was also another single, and those are the only ones that really scored in the US on the alternative charts. And Bandwagonesque, I think, was the biggest they ever got, although they did continue to get a little bigger in the UK a couple albums after this. I think they breached the top half of the top 10, which this album did not quite do. But yeah, I suppose I should make quick work out of this because I'm not deeply familiar with either albums, but as always, it's fun to learn something new in the case of ZZ Top, and to familiarize myself with something in my own collection. You get these collections of, 1,000 plus, like around 1,800 titles, I think in my case now, and things slip through the cracks for years. So one of the definite positives of this game is the ability to pull out an album out of necessity, trying to find something that it has in common with an album that doesn't seem to have anything in common with it, and listen to it and say, hey, they're not all going to be my favorite albums, but some of them, who knows, could become my favorite albums if I just give them more of a chance than I have up to this point. But if you think you have an idea what the connection is between ZZ Top's Tejas and Teenage Fanclub's Bandwagonesque, and I will note that it is specific to these albums. This is not one of those ones that is about the band in general. It is a connection that is specific to the albums that we talked about here today. Go ahead and leave that guess down in the comments, and we will shout out if anyone gets it right in Eric's video on Monday. And I think that's all I got. So I thank you for watching. Bye-bye. Good show, Ponsonby.